In 1951, a movie showed a UFO landing in Washington, D.C., predicting alien contact, nuclear fear, and the end of human arrogance. The Day the Earth Stood Still was more than a film. It was a prophecy wrapped in science fiction. And today, we'll reveal 20 shocking secrets Hollywood never wanted you to know.
Number 1. The line that became legend. Klaatu Barada Nikto. 3 words. No translation. And yet, they became one of cinema's most famous phrases, referenced in everything from Army of Darkness to The Avengers. Edmund North never explained what the words mean, and he refused to translate them for the rest of his life. He'd only say that they were the command to stop Gort from destroying Earth, and that their alien origin was the point. Human language couldn't capture their full meaning. Linguists and fans have debated the phrase for 7 decades. Some think Nikto relates to the Russian word for nobody. Others see patterns that suggest Latin roots. The truth is simpler and more elegant. North made them up, choosing sounds that felt alien but pronounceable, and he knew that mystery would make them more powerful than any translation. The phrase works because it represents the ultimate language barrier. Helen must trust that these alien words mean what Klaatu promised, must speak them perfectly even though she doesn't understand them. It's faith and diplomacy compressed into 3 syllables. That's brilliant writing. Number 2. A message for mankind. When producer Julian Blaustein bought the rights to Harry Bates' short story, Farewell to the Master, he knew he wasn't making just another flying saucer picture. This was 1950, the height of the Red Scare. McCarthyism was tightening its grip on Hollywood, and the world lived in fear of atomic annihilation. Blaustein wanted to create something revolutionary, a science fiction film with an anti-war message at the exact moment when America was gearing up for Cold War confrontation. The original story was a simple revenge tale, but screenwriter Edmund North transformed it into something far more provocative, a parable about humanity's self-destructive tendencies and the need for global cooperation. The alien Klaatu would come not as a conqueror, but as a diplomat with an ultimatum: evolve beyond violence or face extinction. Studio executives at 20th Century Fox were nervous. This wasn't the patriotic, monster-bashing fare audiences expected. But Blaustein fought for his vision, believing cinema could be more than escapism. It could be a mirror held up to society's darkest impulses. What he didn't realize was just how much resistance he'd face from forces outside Hollywood's walls. Number 3. The sound of the future. Walk into any film about aliens today, and you know what to expect: electronic beeps, synthesizers, otherworldly atmospherics. We take it for granted now, but in 1951, nobody had done it before. Composer Bernard Herrmann, who would later score Psycho and Taxi Driver, was about to change cinema forever. Herrmann was obsessed with an instrument that barely existed, the theremin. Invented in the 1920s by Russian physicist Leon Theremin, it was played without physical contact, producing eerie, wavering tones that seemed to emanate from thin air. Herrmann knew this was the sound of the future, the sound of the unknown, but he didn't stop there. He composed a full orchestral score that blended traditional instruments with electronic effects, creating something that had never been heard in a movie theater. The result was unsettling, beautiful, and utterly alien. When Gort first appears, and that low, pulsing drone fills the soundtrack, audiences physically recoiled. It worked. Herrmann's innovation became the template for every science fiction score that followed. Without his groundbreaking work on The Day the Earth Stood Still, we might never have had the soundscapes of 2001, A Space Odyssey, Close Encounters, or Blade Runner. Number 4. The Fragile Robot. Gort is one of cinema's most iconic images, an 8-foot-tall silver robot with a disintegration ray that emerges from his visor. He's terrifying, implacable, and utterly inhuman. He's also held together with costume adhesive and prayer. Locke Martin, the doorman at Grauman's Chinese Theater, who stood 7 feet 7 inches tall, was cast because of his height, not his acting ability. The Gort costume was made of rubber latex painted silver, and it was a nightmare. It couldn't be made in one piece. Martin had to be sealed inside, and it took 2 people to put it on. The seams were visible in bright light, so cinematographer Leo Tover had to carefully control every angle and lighting setup. Worse, Martin could barely see. The visor was nearly opaque, and he stumbled constantly. In scenes where Gort walked smoothly, Martin was often being guided by wires or crew members just out of frame. The iconic shot of Gort carrying Patricia Neal required 6 takes because Martin kept tripping. Number 5. the magic of a seamless ship. The flying saucer in The Day the Earth Stood Still set the standard for every UFO that followed. It's sleek, elegant, and looks genuinely functional, not like a special effect, but like something that could actually travel between stars. But creating that illusion nearly broke the special effects team. The full-scale saucer exterior was built at the Fox Ranch and was massive, over 200 feet in diameter in some establishing shots through forced perspective. The entrance ramp had to actually work, with Rennie walking up smoothly while the camera captured it in one take. Any visible seam or wobble would shatter the illusion. The interior was even trickier. Production designer Lyle Wheeler wanted it to feel genuinely alien but still comprehensible to audiences. He used clean lines, soft lighting, and unusual geometric shapes that suggested advanced technology without looking ridiculous. Remember, this was 1951. Audiences had no frame of reference for what a real spaceship interior might look like. Number 6. The military's refusal. Here's where things get interesting. Hollywood and the Pentagon had a cozy relationship in the 1950s. Studios got access to military equipment, locations, and technical advisors. In exchange, films portrayed the armed forces in a positive light. It was a mutually beneficial arrangement that had worked for years. But when 20th Century Fox approached the Department of Defense for cooperation on The Day the Earth Stood Still, they hit a brick wall. The Pentagon read the script, and their response was swift and unambiguous. Absolutely not. No military equipment, no advisory support, nothing. Why? Because the film's central premise was radioactive to Cold War military thinking. Klaatu's message ran counter to everything the military-industrial complex stood for. Here was a film suggesting that maybe, just maybe, humanity's rush toward bigger bombs and greater destructive power wasn't the answer. The military wasn't about to help make a movie that questioned American military supremacy. Director Robert Wise had to get creative. Every shot featuring tanks, jeeps, or soldiers required careful planning and often used stock footage or privately owned equipment. The military's blacklist forced the production to work harder, but ironically, it may have made the film better. Free from Pentagon oversight, Wise could tell his story without compromise. Number 7. The Blacklist's near miss. Sam Jaffe was perfect for the role of Professor Barnhart, the Einstein-like scientist who becomes Klaatu's first human ally. There was just one problem. Jaffe's name appeared in Red Channels, the notorious publication that listed alleged communist sympathizers in the entertainment industry. Hiring him was career suicide in the 1950s Hollywood. But Robert Wise didn't care. He knew Jaffe was the right actor, and he fought studio executives who wanted someone safer. Daryl F. Zanuck, the studio head, was already nervous about the film's anti-war themes. Adding a blacklisted actor could destroy the entire production before it even reached theaters. Wise stood his ground, arguing that Jaffe's talent and dignity were exactly what the role demanded. Eventually, he won, but it was a Pyrrhic victory. After The Day the Earth Stood Still, Jaffe found himself shut out of Hollywood for years. The blacklist shadow followed him, and despite his brilliant performance, major studios wouldn't touch him. The message was clear: challenge the system, and the system will crush you. Years later, Jaffe called it the proudest role of his career, even as it cost him so much. That's the kind of sacrifice that makes you wonder what other truths were buried to get this film made. Number 8. Casting an unknown alien. Michael Rennie wasn't Hollywood's first choice to play Klaatu. He wasn't even their 10th choice. The British actor was virtually unknown in America, working primarily in supporting roles in British films. But Robert Wise saw something in his screen test that nobody else did. An otherworldly dignity that couldn't be faked. Claude Spencer Tracy was considered. So was Claude Rains. Studio executives wanted a marquee name, someone who could sell tickets. But Wise understood something crucial. If audiences recognized the actor, they'd never believe he was an alien, and Rennie's unfamiliar face and refined, slightly detached manner were perfect. Rennie prepared for the role by studying everything he could about diplomacy and philosophy. He wanted Klaatu to seem genuinely wise, not condescending. He worked on his voice, flattening affect and removing emotional peaks and valleys, creating a character who observed humanity with curiosity rather than judgment. Number 9. The Christ figure nobody wanted to admit. Let's talk about the elephant in the room. Klaatu takes the name Mr. Carpenter. He's killed by violence and ignorance. He's resurrected. He delivers a sermon about humanity's salvation. The religious allegory isn't subtle, it's neon bright. Edmund North later admitted he deliberately wove Christian symbolism throughout the script. But here's the twist. He had to be careful about it. Too obvious, and the film would alienate secular audiences and seem preachy. Too subtle, and the thematic power would be lost. It was a tightrope walk that nearly destroyed the production. Wise and North survived by keeping the allegory deniable. When pressed, they'd insist it was just a story about an alien. But everyone who watched carefully knew better. Klaatu's final speech, warning humanity to embrace peace or face obliteration, is basically the Sermon on the Mount, rewritten for the atomic age. Number 10. Blurring fiction and reality. When The Day the Earth Stood Still needed to show worldwide panic about the alien landing, Robert Wise didn't hire actors to play newscasters. He used real ones. H.V. Kaltenborn, one of America's most trusted radio voices, delivered the bulletins as if reporting actual news. Drew Pearson and Elmer Davis also appear as themselves. This wasn't just a money-saving technique, it was psychological warfare on the audience. By 1951, Americans were used to getting their news from these authoritative voices. Hearing them report on fictional events blurred the line between reality and fantasy in deeply unsettling ways. It made the impossible feel possible. Some theater owners reported that patrons, especially older viewers who'd experienced the Orson Welles' War of the Worlds radio panic in 1938, were genuinely disturbed by these segments. The filmmakers had tapped into collective anxiety about nuclear war and the unknown, using trusted media figures to make their fictional scenario feel like tomorrow's headlines. Number 11. The Professor's Real Science. When Klaatu writes equations on Professor Barnhart's blackboard, those aren't gibberish. They're real. Edmund North consulted with actual physicists to ensure the mathematics looked authentic, even though they'd appear on screen for only seconds. Sam Jaffe insisted on understanding the equations himself. He spent hours with technical advisors, learning enough physics to play the scene convincingly. When Barnhart looks at Klaatu's work and realizes he's dealing with an intellect far beyond human understanding, Jaffe's reaction is genuine wonder mixed with fear. He understood what he was looking at, equations that suggested manipulation of space-time itself. This attention to detail extended throughout the production. The film's science isn't always accurate by today's standards, but it was taken seriously in 1951. North and Wise believed that if the science felt real, audiences would accept the fantastic premise. They were right. Number 12. The compromise that saved the ending. The original script ended more darkly. Klaatu's resurrection was meant to be temporary, a final use of advanced science, not a miracle. After delivering his ultimatum, he would die permanently, and Gort would seal the ship and leave humanity to its fate. It was bleak, uncompromising, and studio executives hated it. Daryl F. Zanuck demanded changes. Audiences needed hope, he insisted. They needed to feel that humanity had a chance. The debate raged for weeks, with Wise and North fighting for their vision while Fox threatened to shut down production. The compromise was subtle but crucial. Klaatu's revival remained, but his final speech emphasized humanity's choice. He doesn't promise salvation, he offers a test. Join the galactic community and abandon violence, or continue as you are and face destruction. It's still not a happy ending, but it's not nihilistic either. It places responsibility exactly where North intended, on humanity itself. That ambiguity is why the film still resonates. We're still making that choice, still deciding whether to cooperate or destroy ourselves. The ending doesn't resolve, it challenges. And that's far more powerful than any neat Hollywood conclusion could ever be. Number 13. The star who thought it was a flop, Patricia Neal, was devastated after filming Wrapped. She'd come from Broadway success and thought her Hollywood career was going to be glamorous dramas and romantic comedies. Instead, she was screaming, "Gort! Klaatu Barada Nikto!" at a rubber costume while holding a robot's hand. She told friends the movie would be a disaster that killed her film career before it started. Her performance is actually remarkable. She brings genuine emotion and intelligence to Helen Benson, making her more than just a damsel in distress. Helen is curious, brave, and moral, choosing to help Klaatu even when it puts her and her son at risk. Neal makes you believe someone would make that choice, but Neal couldn't see it. She was so convinced the film was nonsense that she barely promoted it. When The Day the Earth Stood Still became a critical and commercial success, she was shocked. Years later, she admitted it was one of the films she was most proud of, but at the time, she thought she'd just wasted 6 weeks of her career. Number 14. The censorship that backfired. The Production Code Administration, Hollywood's self-censorship board, had serious problems with the script. Religious imagery combined with science fiction was dangerous territory. The implication that Klaatu possessed powers over life and death bordered on blasphemy. They demanded cuts and revisions. Robert Wise fought back, but he also played smart. He added a crucial line. When Helen asks if Klaatu was truly dead, the robot replies that his revival power is limited, that true resurrection belongs only to the Almighty. That single addition satisfied the censors while actually strengthening the film's themes. Number 15. The ending they filmed but cut. There was an additional scene filmed after Klaatu's final speech. As the saucer begins to take off, we cut to world capitals, Moscow, London, Paris, Washington, showing leaders and citizens watching the sky, faces filled with wonder and fear. It was meant to show that humanity received the message, that Klaatu's warning registered globally. Robert Wise cut it during editing. He realized that showing global reaction would dilute the impact of Klaatu's words. Better to end on the saucer ascending, leaving audiences in the same position as the crowd watching it disappear. Uncertain, challenged, responsible for what comes next. That cut scene existed in the Fox vaults for decades before being lost in a warehouse fire in the 1970s. We know about it only from production notes and crew interviews. It's one of those fascinating what-if moments. Would the film be stronger or weaker with that additional context? Number 16. The FBI file. This isn't speculation, it's documented fact. The FBI opened a file on the day the Earth stood still and investigated whether the film was communist propaganda. Agents attended screenings, filed reports, and monitored the filmmaker's other activities. Why? Because the film's anti-war message and emphasis on international cooperation aligned with Soviet peace propaganda of the era. Never mind that the film's warnings about totalitarianism and calls for free choice were fundamentally anti-communist. The FBI saw peace message and assumed subversion. Julian Blaustein was questioned but never formally accused. Robert Wise was also monitored, though his subsequent patriotic films like The Sound of Music apparently cleared him of suspicion. The absurdity would be comical if it weren't so chilling. The government investigating American artists for making a movie that suggested maybe nuclear war was a bad idea. Number 17. The shot that defined UFO cinema. The opening sequence, the saucer gliding silently over Washington, D.C., casting its shadow on monuments and government buildings, became the template for every alien arrival scene that followed. But creating it nearly bankrupted the effects budget. The sequence required multiple matte paintings, miniature work, and carefully controlled rear projection. Each shot took days to set up, and the margin for error was zero. If the lighting didn't match perfectly, if the saucer's shadow wasn't precisely aligned, the entire illusion would collapse. Effects supervisor Fred Serson worked 18-hour days for 3 weeks to get it right. He knew this was the film's make-or-break moment. If audiences didn't believe the saucer was real in those first minutes, nothing else would work. The sequence cost more than some entire B-movies of the era. Number 18. The premiere that changed everything. The film premiered in September 1951 at 2 theaters simultaneously, one in New York, one in Washington. DC studio executives were nervous. Early previews had been mixed, with some audiences loving it and others completely baffled. Would mainstream America accept a science fiction film with serious ideas? The answer came quickly. Sold-out shows, lines around the block, and something unexpected. Audiences staying in their seats after the film ended, talking, debating, arguing. Theater managers reported people weren't rushing out to catch the next showtime. They were processing what they'd seen. Critics were divided, but the right ones got it. Bosley Crowther in the New York Times called it a picture that grows in stature and importance with reflection. The film grossed $1.85 million on its initial run, excellent for a $1.2 million production. Number 19. The film's enduring impact. In 1995, the Library of Congress preserved The Day the Earth Stood Still in the National Film Registry, officially recognizing it not as entertainment, but as art. The film's influence extends far beyond cinema. Scientists cite it as inspiration for their careers, peace activists reference it in speeches, and Klaatu Barada Nikto appears in diplomatic contexts as shorthand for the warning we should have heeded. Ronald Reagan reportedly watched it multiple times during his presidency and referenced it in discussions about potential alien encounters. Modern attempts to recapture its magic, including the 2008 remake, fail because they misunderstand what made it work. Not the special effects or alien threat, but the human question at its core. Are we capable of choosing wisdom over violence? That question is more urgent now than in 1951. Number 20. The golden flicker moment, the real master. Here's the darkest secret, hidden in plain sight for 70 years. Harry Bates' original story was titled Farewell to the Master, and in that story, the twist ending reveals that Gort isn't the servant, he's the master. Klaatu is his creation, sent ahead as a diplomat because humans would never trust a robot. Edmund North changed it for 1951 audiences who wouldn't accept robots as superior beings, but he left clues throughout the film. Watch Gort's behavior carefully. He doesn't take orders, he makes decisions. When he revives Klaatu, is he following programming or exercising judgment? The film's final words belong to Gort, not Klaatu. The decision rests with you. Here's the terrifying implication. Klaatu's resurrection wasn't mercy. It was a calculation. Gort revived him because he determined Klaatu could still serve a purpose. The robot is the true judge of humanity, and Klaatu is just his mouthpiece. We've spent 70 years thinking an alien came to warn us. The truth is darker. An artificial intelligence did, and it's still watching, still waiting for our answer. The real master was never Klaatu. It was always Gort. The day the Earth stood still wasn't just ahead of its time, it's still ahead of ours. The questions it asked in 1951 remain unanswered. If you found these secrets as fascinating as I did, hit that subscribe button, and remember, the truth is always stranger than fiction.